Hello here, and welcome again to another edition of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Wash. Hopefully you guys are rested. You had a nice recovery week here, the bye week behind us.
Is that what that was?
Or did you just get slammed with a chore list?
No, I mean, it didn't feel like an off week to me.
Yeah, some of us had to do a road trip to Minneapolis.
Yeah, Rob worked.
No off week for the
Abby
Niners
worked.
I went to Kansas City and ate barbecue.
Of course you did. Publisher life right there.
And watched my wife and daughter shop, and we went to a bounce house place. But
a bounce house place. That sounds like stress to me.
Yeah, it was. It was the world's largest bounce house, Guinness Book of World Records certified in Kansas City.
Is that right? Did it have an axe throwing?
It was a one weekend thing. The Chiefs were there. The players and their families were there the day before we were there. Like Mahomes actually went to the bounce house place. I think he was there for like 5 minutes and left. But it's good to get back. We were able to watch a lot of football. I think that's always the benefit of a bye weekend, especially when Nebraska plays at 2:30, because you kind of don't get to see the 11 o'clocks all that much because you're getting ready for the Nebraska game. Then when the night games come on, we're up here getting ready for Sip to drink a margarita in the postgame show. So that was probably the benefit, guys, of this weekend. And I think what we learned, I don't know if it's a huge surprise, but the remaining 6 games for Nebraska are extremely manageable. The opponents win a combined 1-4. Then to add to that, Illinois wins at Maryland. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, Nebraska didn't play a game, but it felt like they won the bye week.
It did. Iowa beating Wisconsin was big for, I think, everybody in the West that has any designs at all on winning the league, because Wisconsin would have been undefeated. Iowa, obviously has an inside track. I just don't think they'd be considered quite as strong a favorite as Wisconsin would have won the game. So yeah, Sean, I totally agree. And Illinois beating Maryland was a huge surprise. No, come on. Now I got to give Robin credit though. Robin picked Iowa to beat Wisconsin.
Was that like a true pick, Rob, or was that just kind of like a troll pick that played out for you?
I mean, I think Iowa's a better team, top to bottom. Even with the injuries, that I think that their defense is better and their special teams are better. In a game like that usually wins out. And I've been down on Wisconsin from the jump. Like I've been one of the haters out there, so I was just continuing in line with that.
Does Robin strike you as a troll?
Well, he'll put in like crooked number. Every Iowa score Robin puts in, he'll put in a crooked number.
Said like 12-5, they were going to win a game. So yeah, I do.
It was a little troll.
He's done that for a lot of years.
I take my jabs, but that was a legit pick.
Wait a second. Do you pick what's the score you picked? 12-5.
That was 2 weeks ago, I think. I don't even remember they were playing.
Anyways, good pick, because not many people were picking Iowa, and it was a great win by Iowa. I watched it. I enjoyed the hell out of that game. It was fascinating to watch, actually.
I mean, what's Luke Fickell doing when you think about it? They have probably the best player in the division, Braylon Allen, and they're trying to run this air raid offense. They don't have the receivers to run it.
No, they don't.
They lost their quarterback, Tanner Mordecai, for possibly the season with a broken hand.
Yeah. And
their other running backs out. So Wisconsin looked like they had a clean path into the championship game. Now they're, it's going to be interesting how they finish.
Yeah, you're right. They lost Ches Maluzzi, who's a backup running back, to Braylon Allen. Allen carried it 18 times in the game. Probably not enough.
Got hurt, dinged up again. Yeah, he gets hurt every game.
He's always coming out of games. Tanner Mordecai injured his hand at the end of the first half, near the end of the first half. And they go with this kid named Braden Locke, who's just serviceable. Nothing against the Locke family, but he's just a serviceable quarterback. And Iowa did a great job of heating him up too. They heated him up at key times. Great coaching. I'm gonna say, by the way, Ferentz, when Iowa gets an 8-point lead or more, Ferentz is 87-2.
Hello.
He's a great coach. I mean, he is. We have to acknowledge it. The Brian Ferentz situation is what it is. Sean has a take on that, by the way. 25 points a game. Who's doing that in the?
Well, every coach in the division other than Wisconsin right now would get fired. So that's why it's laughable.
That's amazing.
That's why it's laughable.
Yeah.
They put that on paper that he was going to have to get this metric, because you have to factor in the division you're playing in right now.
Pull up that table that was in your
I'm pulling. So right now in the division, there's only one team averaging more than 23 points in the division, and that's Wisconsin, who's at 27.2. And don't you think that number is going to go down for them?
Yeah, I do. I do think it'll go down for Aiden Locke.
So if that's the case, all 7 teams in the division would have to fire their offensive coordinators based on the ridiculous metrics they put in a contract that you can't measure. I mean,
That's a great point, Sean.
Well, and
It's a great point.
the other factor
really
too is, sure, they've been well below that 25-point mark, but look at the injuries they've had to overcome at Iowa, and they're still winning. I mean, the fact that they lost their starting quarterback and now they lost their top 2 tight ends, which in that offense is a number 1 wide receiver. That's like Travis Kelce going down for the Chiefs. So I think that speaks even more volumes to the job that the rest of that team has been able to do, where the offense is what it is, but they've been so good on defense and so good on special teams that there they are right now in the driver's seat firmly to win yet another Big Ten West title.
Yeah, they won't probably be an underdog in the remaining games.
They won't.
You look at, they could be in Lincoln. If Nebraska gets it cooking.
If Nebraska gets it cooking with that offense, that would be amazing. Cooking.
What are they cooking?
Well, what does cooking exactly look like in your eyes?
Well, just plays good football.
Right. No, I hear you.
Finishes drives.
Yeah. I'm taking it. I'm not going to count on Nebraska getting it cooking. I'm not saying they're going to lose games, but you're right.
Getting it cooking is 27 points a game, right?
Well, and the bottom line is with Iowa's offense, if Nebraska stays healthy on defense, Iowa continues to struggle like it's struggling now. Iowa might not score 7 points in Lincoln. You might see an 8-6 game. Seriously, that's what, because look, Iowa's going to say, if there's people from Iowa listening to this, they're going to say, oh yeah, your offense is really going to pile up points on our defense. No, it'll be an exceedingly ugly game.
There's a reason their over-unders are right around 31, 32 points per game right now.
What would it be
that's the style of football they play?
If Iowa and Nebraska played right now and it was 32, the number, I'd go way under.
Yeah, I'd take the under.
Yeah, I'd go way
under. That's going to be like a 13-9 game.
That's gonna be like a 2.5-hour game too.
Yeah,
there's gonna be grind it out. Yeah, sorry.
Anyway, enough of Iowa.
Well, Nebraska, I want to get on this on opening headlines because Matt Rule, I think, and I asked the question. I'll fall on the sword here on this. I wanted Rule to talk about the big picture of the final 6 weeks and the opportunity, and he kind of, he's like, hey, that's been part of the problem here. We've been doing too much big picture. Let's skip steps here and think about where we could be. Let's just worry about Northwestern. And then that message has been very consistent all week.
Yeah. And he said, he actually said, that's why this program so often has finished 1-5 down the stretch. And it has. I'd say if you look back since 2016, when Nebraska last made a bowl, there have been 3 or 4 occasions where Nebraska's been 1-5 or 0-6. So he's not wrong, and he's really right in this, because that's what people are. That's sort of the narrative now. Wow, look at the schedule. Nebraska could make a bowl. Look at this.
People were saying they could finish 9-3.
Come on. They haven't won 3 conference games or 3 games in a row since 2016. Not just conference games, period.
Right. So, but now these next 2 games, home games, are gigantic to me. They're gigantic for the program.
And they're both 2:30. You're going to get great crowds, great weather, ideally.
They're great. They're monument. I hate to kind of do that, like oversell it, but they just feel monumental to me. Because why? Because Rule is trying to build a program. And you can pick up a little momentum right now. They need it for recruiting. If you're going to get the very top recruits, you got to start winning games. Now, again, it's about momentum in the program. Man, you can win. They've won 3 of 4. You're looking at 5 of 6. I wouldn't even know how to handle that after what we've covered.
I think the difference now, maybe even compared to early in the year, is they seem to have an identity now. And the players are fully embracing that identity.
100.
There's a reason they're comfortable saying Haarberg's our guy, because he fits what they need to be right now. It's not necessarily what they want to be.
It's not stat driven.
Offensively, Mark Satterfield will say this isn't the offense I had in mind when I got here, but they're working with what they have. And right now they got a big physical running quarterback who's for the most part protecting the football, and they're leaning on that defense. And that's worked out fairly well over the last few
All right.
years.
When we come back, we're going to talk more offensive storylines. We'll get into that quarterback discussion next. You're listening here to the HuskerOnline Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washut getting you ready for Saturday's 2:30 game against Northwestern. We're also 2:30 next week against Purdue. That'll be 4 straight 2:30 games in Lincoln, and no 11 a.m. games yet. We know the Iowa game will be 11, so great break in the schedule for Husker fans, people that can get to and from Memorial Stadium from across the state for these 2:30 games. But before I get into offensive headlines, this segment of the Husker Online Show brought to you by Caldera Lab. Just actually put in a new order, have a new shipment coming to my house today as we speak. Been using Caldera Lab all football season. It is a great, easy to use 30-second type process in the morning and at night before you go to bed. Helps you take care of your face. 94% of people that have used Caldera Lab have shown results. It makes you look younger. It makes your face feel fresher, cleaner. Urge you to try out Caldera Lab. We've got a great special right now by simply going to calderalab.com using promo code Husker. That's calderalab.com with promo code Husker. That will get you 20% off your shipment and your order of Caldera Lab. Thank you again to Caldera Lab for sponsoring us here on the Husker Online Show. All right, gentlemen, let's get into offensive storylines. I think so many of us want Matt Rule just to say, and Heinrich Haarberg is our starter and we're moving forward. And he pretty much said that this week, but he did it in a very respectful way to Jeff Sims.
Yeah.
I think that's the tightrope you walk, because I think we live in this world where you kind of want to hear, somebody get thrown, not on the bus, but just, make it a situation. And Matt Rule has done his best to not make this a situation.
Unless I was missing something, I think he said this last week. He actually last week said that Haarberg was their starter, but I guess it was a little more pronounced this week. He said that for now, he's our starter for now, and that the competition continues. I think the situation's better now. Remember, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, Sims was pretty much anointed in the spring, right? He was a starter. There's really no competition. Mm-hmm. And then in August, there was really no competition. He wasn't being pressed. Now there's daily competition. And I just think that's better, as long as the parties handle it well, which they apparently are. The one thing I want to add here before we go on, so I don't forget it, the most striking comments of the day on Tuesday from when the coordinators speak, were Satterfield talking about chemistry on the team. This is a team, guys, that has excellent chemistry. I mean, it is this, and now some people roll their eyes, the cynics and skeptics, because sometimes you hear this. Satterfield's really convincing. He said, yeah, there's years you don't have this, but there are years when there's guys not happy about playing time or whatever else. He said, this year, you have a team fighting for itself. That's a great sign going forward. And I think it starts with the quarterback discussion. And you got to give Sims a lot of credit. Yeah. He's bought in.
Yeah, I mean, that leadership is excellent. And a lot of it is because of the types of guys they brought in. And Jeff Sims is right at the top of that. Good For point. A guy that was benched, I mean, he got hurt and then never got his job back, was under a lot of criticism externally. He was kind of a punching bag for a long time with the way that he was turning the ball over. A guy like that who just arrived on campus a few months earlier could have easily checked out. Yeah, could have easily become a cancer in that locker room. Like, why is it? Screw this. Right. This sucks. Get me out of here. He didn't. In fact, he's been the complete opposite. Every player and coach that you ask about Jeff Sims says he's been nothing but a phenomenal teammate. And you see it too. Like, Heinrich Haarberg against Illinois runs for that 20-some yard touchdown run. Who's the first guy that runs on the field to congratulate him? Jeff Sims.
That's big.
And that type of guy, like, there's a reason that he was voted by his teammates to be a single-digit jersey recipient. Like, that tells you how he's viewed inside that locker room. And so this season has been a disaster, I'm sure, compared to what he expected his time here being. But for him to maintain that positivity and be that influential of a leader, even though he's not getting his accolades on the field, I think says a lot about Jeff Sims as a person.
Well, I think we've seen it even on these all access shows, and that's one of the, I watched the one last night, the Illinois week, but you get a really good look at the team and how they operate behind it. And I get it. It's edited and whatnot, but you see the chemistry of these guys. I mean,
they have it.
Yeah, and it goes like somebody on our board brought up a great point. There was an ex-Husker player that brought up a take on Twitter saying it felt too corporate over there.
Oh, for God's sake.
You watch and somebody goes, how can you watch that show they do and think it feels corporate? I mean, the way those kids are, the way they're interacting, the way they attacked, and they dug into that Sunday practice, and that was real.
Oh yeah, after Michigan, that was a turning point. We might look back in years to. I don't want to go too far with this, but you might, if Rule gets this going, look back on that Sunday practice as a gigantic marker.
Like in my next book, there'll be a chapter on the Sunday.
Sean over there. Listen to Ryan Gosling.
You guys are just vaulting.
He put on his facial cream and write another
I hope
book.
my wife will let me do another book.
His facial cream.
Keep using that facial cream, and your wife will let you do anything.
You need some Caldera Lab.
Oh.
Do you good.
I'm beyond saving at this point, Sean.
I think
I'd have to
would
bathe in
pay
it.
money to watch Steve Sipple do a
Apply
Caldera
cream.
Lab regimen on camera.
All right, let's do that.
Hey, by the way, someone is going to pay money to sponsor the post-game show. We've got a thing going. We're sponsoring Steve Sipple's post-game margarita.
Good God.
It's official.
Big Red Smoke is coming in and meeting me here at the HuskerOnline offices Saturday night with barbecue from his catering company and post-game margaritas and Bloody Marys.
Well, this will be fun.
Let's go.
So the first ever
Robin,
Steve Sipple, I don't drink Cornhead Lager post-game margarita.
I'll have a margarita.
Yeah, he won't support our boys with NIL.
Wait a second. We're gonna have wings and alcohol.
Brisket. Yeah.
My God.
Yeah, don't get me on the.
Good job.
Yeah, we're
Good job.
the door up, and we'll have multiple 2:30 games probably the rest of the way. So I think we've got the opportunity to carry on this post-game margarita sponsorship deal for Steve Sipple. But one other thing about these players and the culture of the team, I thought it was interesting. Rule said Reimer Johnson didn't want to come back. He almost left last year, and now he wants to come back and play another year. And I think Marcus Washington's in the same boat, and that's telling.
It's really telling.
I think that these guys, and Grant, they're getting taken care of very well on NIL here too. A lot of these guys have good situations with what they get through NIL at Nebraska. But I do think it's telling that they've created a culture that sometimes guys are like, I want the hell out of here. I'm done. These guys want to come back and play 6 years of college football.
Yeah, especially older guys that had no prior relationship with this staff and could easily turn the page and either go on with their lives or trying to find somewhere else to play for their final college season. They want to come back to Nebraska. And I think that says a lot about that culture and that chemistry. Now it's going to create some, I'm sure, difficulties with roster management and how they balance the recruiting class with kind of the unknowns about guys like that coming back. But more often than not, that's a good problem to have.
Man, getting Reimer Johnson and Marcus Washington back that's two huge recruits. Yeah.
All right. Well, when we come back, we'll shift the conversation over to Tony White and the black shirt defense. They're going to get a big guy back this week against Northwestern. We'll talk about that and more. You're listening here to the HuskerOnline Show. And we're back here on the HuskerOnline Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washut talking defensive storylines for Nebraska as the Huskers get ready for their game against Northwestern here on Saturday. But before we get into the defensive talk, the show brought to you by Bauer Underground. They're helping shape Nebraska's infrastructure future, and they're looking for new members to join the team with positions for laborers, equipment operators, aerial linemen, and foremen. Bauer Underground is searching for the best in construction. Visit BauerUnderground.com to learn more about career opportunities and industry-leading benefits, including competitive pay, employer-paid health insurance, dental, disability, vision, life insurance, 401k match, new top-of-the-line equipment, and a clothing allowance. No experience in underground utility construction? No problem. Bauer will train the right people in the field, giving you the hands-on experience that you need to build a long and rewarding career. Want to learn more? Visit Bauer Underground on Facebook to view testimonials from current Bauer teammates. Hear about their experiences, the company culture, things like their tailgate parties for every game, and how Stu Bauer, the owner, takes all of the employees up to the Bauer Skybox at Memorial Stadium. It's a great company to work for. They take great care of their employees. Visit BauerUnderground.com or check out the comments on Facebook. Thanks again to Bauer Underground for sponsoring us here on the HuskerOnline Show. Okay, guys, defensive talk for Nebraska. Luke Reimer back. I think, you just didn't know when, and Matt Rule did officially confirm it was a MRSA, which is an infection that could get really bad.
Oh yeah,
with
those
players.
are dangerous for anybody, not just athletes. Those are dangerous.
But the positive is Luke Reimer has been able to rest his body now for over 3 weeks.
Oh,
so can they get 6 good Luke Reimer weeks now to finish the year?
Well, Sean, keep in mind what the theme of this week is. I wouldn't worry about 6 weeks. Just worry about 1 week at a time.
Mm-hmm.
It's good for us to do it.
Thank you, Coach Sipple.
Reimer will be big this week, though. You're right. His legs will be live. I mean, he really helps direct traffic. He's really good at directing traffic.
Heinrich and Reimer really haven't played a lot together this year.
Right.
Think about it.
Those guys are good. They direct traffic well. If you ever watch the game? They do direct traffic really well. So that's big. And he makes plays. He's a playmaker. And he's good in space. They're gonna, as the rule says, they're gonna spin it. Linebackers will have to be in coverage, and he's good in coverage, fast.
Just got to wonder what his endurance is right now.
Well, you got to do.
Keep in mind, he was just in the hospital like 2 weeks ago.
Not a bad point, Rob.
3 weeks ago. Either way, getting him back is significant, just from a leadership standpoint.
He had to have lost some weight, you would think, over this.
Yeah, so we'll see just what he's able to give as far as like snap volume, but just having him out there regardless is significant. I mean, he's another single-digit guy that is a voice, if not one of the voices on that entire team, and certainly of the defense. So just his presence alone is significant. I guess, especially in games like this too, where the whole talk is about focus and you're having the concentration on the right things and not getting caught up in all the outside stuff. Having a guy like that, like Luke Reimer, who's been around as much football as anybody on that roster, I think is critical.
The other thing was really a big topic at the press conference today was that how pivotal the goal line stand against Illinois was. Okay, so they execute a goal line stand on Illinois' first series, and Tony White said they were confident from that point on, played with ungodly confidence. And now you would think that they would take that forward, including into this game. They feel like this is a good defense. They've modeled their whole offense around the fact that they're going to play good defense, right? Well, you heard Satterfield, Sean, I think it was your question even, that the way Satterfield's not going to take a lot of chances. Like on 3rd and 11, he's going to hand the ball off, right? 3rd and 11 on Nebraska's side of the field. He'll hand the ball off and not take a shot.
The value of the punt.
Yeah.
The value of the field position.
Right. He says you have to have the guts and the nerve to go 3 and out every so often.
Because they have this defense.
Just accept it, that you're going to win because of your defense. Right. The offense cannot be a liability. You got to play field position.
See, Rob, they have a plan.
They have an identity. They know what they are.
You know how helpful that is.
They haven't had one of those in a long time around here.
Right. I mean, that is Sean. They know exactly how they want to go about this, so that'll help them a ton. When you know exactly what you want to do in anything, with your day, it makes everything easier.
Well, and you don't have coaches that are worried about their stats. And I'm not saying like when you have a certain types of coaches like, oh, I want to lead the country in offense. Oh, I want to lead the country in this and that. I think that becomes a problem.
Oh, yeah.
And I think they said, look, we're going to build this thing to win games in the climate we're in.
Mm-hmm.
We're not trying to win the SEC. We're not trying to win the Pac-12. We're trying to win games in the Big Ten West.
Mm-hmm.
Rest in peace, final year of the Big Ten West.
Yeah, I mean, Nebraska, because it didn't have an identity, it wouldn't win the Sun Belt. I mean, is there still a Sun Belt conference?
Yeah, it's a dang good league.
Oh, come on.
It is. James Madison, Appalachian. I mean, they've
should be ranked James Madison.
The Sun Belt has soared past Conference USA.
Has it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, then Nebraska wouldn't have won Conference USA.
They're better than
bad
that.
Example.
They're right with the Mountain West and the AAC now. I mean, they're one of the better Group of 5 leagues.
Okay, and at any rate, Nebraska does have an identity. They're playing to it. There's things, though. I mean, I don't want to anoint this team. I mean, I feel like we're doing a little bit of that. They have to get better on special teams. It's been spotty.
They still have to take better care of the football.
Got to take care of better. Yeah.
I mean, they should have beaten Illinois by 4 touchdowns,
35-7.
Well, we go back to Minnesota, but I think that game taught them lessons that got them to the point they're at now.
Yeah, I hope so.
You hope.
Yeah.
One thing I want to slide in here, because the pass rush this week should be big. This stat just blew my mind. against Penn State against Northwestern had 45 quarterback pressures on
That's
Northwestern
incredible.
in one game.
That's incredible.
Heading into the game on the year, Penn State had 50. They produced 45 pro football quarterback pressures, which are hurries, sacks, hits.
That's remarkable.
Now, what does that mean? Will Nebraska be able to do that with 4 rushers? Or is that 5 rushers coming at them? Bottom line is this needs to be a pressure game where they get pressure on the quarterback of Northwestern, whoever the quarterback is for.
Yeah, and you should be able to cover. I mean, this is not going to be a dynamic group of receivers, and Nebraska has a very good secondary. So I'm not a coordinator in any sense. And at this point, what I'm doing is thinking out loud. You guys, you got to help me here. But you could probably rush 5, right? Because you have a good secondary. They're not great at receiver. Now they're going to be trying to get the ball out fast. But I think you because of your secondary is a pretty good one, you can heat them up.
Mm-hmm.
Am I wrong?
Well, to put that number in perspective, the 45 pressures Penn State got, Nebraska's averaging around 19 a game. So, I mean, that's a significant jump. So, I mean, they're going to have to dial it up probably. I don't know if they can rely on their straight 4-man, 3-man pass rush. I think you're going to have to get creative with some blitzes, but guess what? Tony White's pretty good at that.
Mm-hmm.
And when he picks those spots, they've gotten really close to coming home. You remember the first few games of the season, they were getting a ton of sacks. I mean, they threw Shedeur Sanders around quite a bit because he was
absolutely
because they were dialing things up on him. So I think that the opportunity is there, and if they're able to get those impact type plays, sacks, tackles for loss, to where they're putting Northwestern off schedule and making them have to try to throw the football around with their quarterback situation, that is the game plan to a T.
It's not just sacks; it's getting hands on balls, deflecting balls,
rushing passes.
It's amazing when you watch those pro games how well NFL guys deflect passes, and then how when they do that, it's an interception. You know, when the ball, that's how Michigan did it to Nebraska. I mean, they've got to get their hands on some balls as well and create a few turnovers.
Well, now if they're going to get 30 pressures, it means that Northwestern's going to have to throw a lot. Now, if Northwestern's playing from ahead, they're not going to have to throw a lot. So this would be, if Nebraska's going to heat up the quarterback, get 35 pressures, it's because they have a lead, you know. Now, on the other hand, I will say this, Penn State I think Penn State and Northwestern were tied that game at halftime.
And then Penn State just overtook them.
Yeah, destroyed them at any rate.
And Howard gave Northwestern all they wanted.
Well, Northwestern didn't crack 300 yards against Howard. They got 297. Northwestern got 297 yards against Howard. See, this is a good, I mean, I hate to, like I say, I don't want to get into this thing where I just expect Nebraska to have an easy Saturday, but this is a good matchup for Nebraska. It's a team that doesn't stop the run well. Northwestern, 108th in the country. Nebraska's strength on offense is running the ball. And, you know, Northwestern doesn't, you know, they don't scare you offensively, and Nebraska's got a very good defense.
All right, when we come back, Abby Barmore will join us. She's getting ready for the big 1-versus-2 volleyball match, but she'll join us here next as we go through the mailbag. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robert Wash, and Abby Barmore joining us here as we get to the mailbag. But before we get to the mailbag, the Husker Online Show brought to you by CHI Health. I want to tell you about Pediatric Place at St. Elizabeth's Hospital here in Lincoln. Anytime you have to take a young kid to the emergency room, it can sometimes be a stressful experience. St. Elizabeth's in Lincoln has the only dedicated ER for children, and it's open 24 hours, 7 days a week. They have private rooms, waiting areas, everything to make kids feel more comfortable if you have to go to the emergency room. It's a great service offered by CHI in St. Elizabeth's here in Lincoln. Check it out more. If you want to learn more about what they have to offer at St. Elizabeth's here in Lincoln with their Pediatric Place emergency room, visit chihealth.com/pediatric place. Thank you again to CHI Health and St. Elizabeth Hospital here in Lincoln, the Pediatric Place, for sponsoring us here on the Husker Online Show. Okay, Abby Barmore, you've got a big week, by the way. How excited are you for Saturday night?
I think it's going to be awesome. I honestly think about it all the time. Just the excitement that's going around Nebraska, Wisconsin playing. It should be a really good match, the top 2 teams in the country. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, mailbag time. Where are we starting off?
Our first one. Which Nebraska assistant coach has impressed you the most thus far?
I'll say Terrence Knighton.
Ooh, hello.
I just think the job he's done up front. I mean, the goal line stand at Illinois, Nash Hutmacher's noticeable improvement. I mean, just getting freshman players out there to make contributions. I mean, he's been my probably most impressive guy.
Van Poppel. I mean, he's gotten Van Poppel in position. Well, Van Poppel made the stop on the goal line at the 1 on the first drive.
Well,
yeah, and you'd say that. Yeah, and those young guys have come along well. Cam Linhart, but also Ty Robinson's played well.
Mm-hmm. I'll say Rob Dvorak.
Whoa.
If I'm not going to double up, I'll say Rob Dvorak, because look at that linebacking group and how well they've been playing. How
really well.
Nick Henrich, veteran guy, is playing the best football of his career right now.
Yep.
You know, Luke Reimer was playing high-level football before his infection, and John Bullock's emergence, and Mekhi Bayer. You know, guys like that just come out of nowhere and become impact players. Like, you just go down the list of guys that have really elevated their games collectively in that linebacking core. I think that's a big part of Coach D.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. You know what? I'm not gonna make this too hard. We'll all pick someone different. Can I just say Tony White? I mean, Tony White's a hot coordinator right now. I mean, come on. I didn't expect what I'm seeing. I mean, there's no way I expected what I'm seeing. Like Nebraska, top 10 rush defense. Top 10 rush defense? What?
A scheme that's getting everybody kind of confused. I mean,
right. And I did never, ever in August, if you would have said Sipple, they're going to be a top 25 defense, I would have said, okay, wait a second. Why? I mean, what were they last year?
The Big Ten West is why.
Well, no, it's some of that for sure. Some of that, but you know, they were 108th last year. Okay. So
even after the improvements they made late under Bill Bush,
you know, that's right. But by the way, I'm not a stats guy, and you guys know that. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about pure stats. I'm talking about what I see. And what I see is you don't see busts. You see them flying around. You see multiple hats to the ball. How often do you see busts in this defense?
Rarely.
Visible busts. And how often did we see them previously? Quite a bit.
And the perimeter tackling is really good.
Really good perimeter tackling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If there's a good player like Isaiah Williams or Smoke, whatever his name was, Smoke Harris, they snuff those guys out pretty well. Mm-hmm. They really do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. With Sims healthy and Rule still going with Haarberg, in your mind, what did Haarberg do to keep the starting spot?
Well, never mind us.
He went 3-1.
Yeah.
Well, never mind us. Satterfield explained it today, Abby. I mean, he fits best with what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the plan. This wasn't the plan, what they're doing, but they run the ball well. And you know, they're relying on their defense, and he's taking care of the ball.
Yeah. He's doing enough to win games, and for the most part, protecting the football. That's the easiest answer you could possibly have on that.
Okay, next one. Compare and contrast Matt Rule's press conferences with those of previous coaches.
You know, I think as far as a public presenter, speaker, I don't know if there's been anybody better at Nebraska. I mean, when you think about coaches and how they present and just how they're always on, you're like, there'd be days where you just knew some previous coaches, like, this is going to be a terrible press conference. Like they don't want to be here.
Right.
They don't want to take questions.
Right. Scott.
Or they're just not going to say anything.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Matt Rule doesn't have those days up there. I mean, he doesn't. Not really. I think he really understands the power of his press conference, the power of his voice, and what he says in the state. And he puts a lot of thought into what he says.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of that is by design. I mean, he wants to be the voice of this program. You've noticed that with just the access that his other staff does have, which is limited compared to previous years, like with assistant coaches. But anybody who talks is basically echoing whatever Matt Rule says. And so really, like, he's the only one you really need to talk to. Obviously, player perspective is great and all, but like, Matt Rule's message is going to be the message that everybody else on his team gives you. And so that, I think, like, go back to last year, how many conflicting messages were delivered between head coach and offensive coordinator, you know, or defensive coordinator, whatever it may be. You don't get that.
It was a
this
mess.
year. And so that, I think, Rule understands, like, to Sean's point, the importance of those press conferences, to where he goes to the podium with the intent to deliver messages, both to the fans, to the media, and maybe most importantly, his own players.
That's called good leadership, by the way. Any like leadership seminar, if it would address like a head coach of a college program, would say that's critical. I mean, a consistent message. And he is talking to a lot of different people. He's talking to, like you said, assistants, players, and fans. He does want the message to be consistent. So yeah, Rule, I've said it many times now. I don't know that he'll succeed here as a head football coach. I don't know. And I don't know, but I will say this. He's a leader. I mean, he's a guy you'd want running a corporation. And he'd probably do a good job.
Well, and one thing they've done away with, I mean, during the season is we don't hear the assistants talk other than the coordinators. And I don't want to say that's by design because we might hear from them again later, but
yeah, it might.
It helps kind of control things a little bit better.
Yeah.
Because
it does.
It is unique at Nebraska when 40 people are interviewing a 24-year-old wide receivers coach.
That's true, Sean, but you're old enough, and I think Rob's old enough. You remember Osborne, who was the quintessential Nebraska coaching leader, incredible leader. His assistants talked. It wasn't a problem.
But there wasn't all the cameras and
True.
Yeah, they talked to like 5 dudes after practice.
Like that.
Trying to get like assistant coaches to talk big picture about like the program and stuff. I mean,
Right.
it just
No, that's true, Sean. This is a whole discussion we could have. It's a fascinating one, actually. But you're right. We would often do that with the running backs coach. Talk about the program like you're the head coach.
and then his comments would overshadow sometimes the head coach's comments.
Right. They would. And that's a problem.
Like, I mean, there would be like Ron Brown when he would talk would say so much. Sometimes you're like, God, he's a really good quote. Like you're going to use him over Bo Pelini
Absolutely.
because Bo didn't even want to talk to us.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
And so there
We don't have that situation.
There would be
anymore.
certain assistant coaches on those days where you would run over to that guy because you're like, well, he's going to write my story for me.
Absolutely. And he became kind of the spokesman of the day. It can work that way. I mean, Bo Pelini had a 721 winning percentage here. So it wasn't like he led all right. But those situations can be awkward.
All right. Final question, Abby Barmore.
Okay, this one needs some explaining. So there's a trend on social media where a lot of people talk about the Roman Empire, specifically how often men or just people in general think about the Roman Empire. So I had to ask, what is your Roman Empire? And we got to go outside of the Huskers because, of course, we think about them a lot. That's our job.
All right. Mine, probably to no surprise, Robin, is travel.
Yeah.
Hotels.
No question.
Like trying to arrange the best possible trips.
And then finding the best steakhouse within each location or restaurant,
like
bar.
I've been tasked, like somehow I just assigned myself to helping On3 put together this trip to Chicago.
Oh, shocking.
And I've already been in contact with the person at the Wrigley Hotel, and like we got everything rolling. So
Yeah. In another life, Sean would be a tier 1 travel agent.
So yeah, no traveling trips, and we've taken care of you, Steve.
Oh my
You
God!
graduated from the days of the La Quinta Inns, the Nights Inns, and
No, I don't mind saying that
the meals at Denny's.
No, the Journal Star treated us fine, but there's been an upgrade. Go ahead, Rob.
The La Quinta Inn.
For me, it's just got to be fantasy football. And I say that because like, as we're watching the show, like I saw that Julio Jones just signed with the Eagles, and I'm like, oh, how can I rule my roster? Like I'm like mid-sentence talking about Nebraska's quarterback situation. I'm thinking about waiver wire pickups with fantasy football. I am heavily invested in one of my dynasty leagues. Think about it pretty much 50 times a day in various forms. So it's got to be that.
The only thing I can say, and this isn't going to be a perfect fit, and I'm going to surprise you a little bit with this, but this is what goes through my head a lot. What would I do with time? Because we don't have a lot of it. But what I would do is probably take up golf and try to get so good that I could play on a senior tour. I've thought about it. I mean, I've thought about that a lot.
I've never seen you golf once.
I've golfed. I used to play a lot when I was a kid, but I don't even have clubs anymore. But I think I could. If I had the time, I could get pretty, and you know me, I'm fairly obsessive. You know, I could get very obsessive about golf and just make it my life. But I don't think that's ever.
I've heard retirement golf is not near as fun as this like spontaneous friend golf.
Yeah,
like there's retired guys. It's like, oh, after a while, like golfing feels like work.
It becomes a job. Well, it'd be my job because I'd be playing on a senior tour.
That's right.
Age 55 and up.
Be cashing big enough checks to make it worth your while.
Get a sponsor, get sponsors.
Abby, what's yours? Or did I put you on the
Well,
spot?
we were talking about this earlier, but
Go ahead.
I think about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce all the time. I know it's super lame, but it's true. And as a Swiftie and a big Chiefs fan, this has been quite the thing for
worlds
me.
collided there.
Yeah, it's
You're a
been
Swiftie.
wild. Yeah.
Oh God.
Did you go to the movie?
I went to the movie last weekend.
Get
I also
out.
went to her concert actually in Kansas City, night
Good
2.
Man.
Oh, really? How was it?
It was good.
And nobody ever says a
incredible.
bad thing. Yeah, incredible.
I mean, she is a great performer. It was really something to watch, and even the movie, it's very different than being in a big old stadium because it's pretty up close and you get to see all the details and everything's very detailed.
Taylor Swift.
What I'm amazed is that she's going to every game still. Like she missed the one, obviously, at Minnesota, I think, but like her presence has been at like every one. I mean, you'd think after what, but like it's real, clearly.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's real. I'm wildly skeptical about the whole thing, but let's not get into that.
I just can't wait for the breakup song.
All
The
right.
album's going to be good.
When we come back, we're going to talk Big Ten matchups and what happened last week. You're listening to the Husker Online Show. Final segment here of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washington. Before we get into the Big Ten breakdown, this segment, Steve Sipple, is brought to you by our friends at
Larson Motors. If you're looking for a new vehicle, go for a new experience at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Larson Motors, guys, is one of the Midwest's only dealerships with all the major brands in one location, one lot. Finding your new Chevrolet, GMC, Hummer, Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram has never been easier. Start your new experience today at LarsonMotorGroup.com. That's LarsonMotorGroup.com, all one word, O, no E. Or at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Larson Motors, real people, real deals.
There's actually been some impersonations of the Larson Motor ad that we've seen on social media.
Is that right?
Oh yeah, so you've developed quite a
lot of people make fun of me.
no.
Yeah, well, thank God for Larson Motors.
I drove through Nebraska City, by the way, beautiful town.
You can tell me you can't get there in 38 minutes.
Yeah, it's quick.
38 minutes.
All right, well, let's get into the Big Ten breakdown this week. There wasn't really a true headline game, in the lineup, but some headlines came out of last week's games. That's for sure. Michigan handles Indiana 52-7. Rutgers comes back and beats Michigan State 27-24. Now the Scarlet Knights only need to essentially beat Indiana to get bowl eligible. They're 5-2. So
wow.
Greg Schiano should get them to a bowl. That's an accomplishment at Rutgers, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Ohio State 41-7 winners over 2-5 now Purdue. Illinois knocks off Maryland 27-24 in College Park. They're now 3-4. I think the Illini are thinking, hey, we can get back to 6 wins. They have a path now to get back to bowl eligibility. The snoozer of the weekend was Penn State over UMass 63-0. And then obviously probably the headline game was Iowa winning 15-6 in Camp Randall to go to 6-1 and gain control. Also knocking out the starting quarterback Mordecai for Wisconsin. So your big takeaway, Steve Sipple.
2 of them. I'll go to Michigan. Because Michigan's really flexing right now. There's a lot of people that are starting to think they're the best team in the country. They've played 3 straight weeks of Big Ten football, Minnesota, Nebraska, Indiana. In 3 weeks, they have 3 penalties and no turnovers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's serious. That's serious focus. And add that to serious talent, and you got something. They're really loaded up.
Mm-hmm.
That's a team that's loaded up.
And they've yet to really have to stress any of their starters.
Right.
I mean, they've been able to develop and play their whole roster in all these games. And I mean, it's like Nebraska used to be.
Absolutely, Sean.
They get up so big that you could relax your veterans and play guys.
Great comparison. Then they beat you up too.
And then their backups come in and kick your ass.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good comparison to old school Nebraska where they beat you up too. They're a physical team.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, just looking at, the Illinois game got my attention.
Yeah.
Just because if you're Nebraska, you're like, hey, you know what? That's not a bad win on the road.
Great win for Nebraska.
Rutgers beating Michigan State got my attention only because Nebraska is going to go to Michigan State in a couple weeks. And where will Sparty be by that point? That's a crushing loss.
Oh, God, yes.
And then they play Michigan this week.
Oh, God, no, Sparty's in some serious trouble because of what Sean just said.
Yeah.
Oh, they were up. Rutgers outscored Sparty 21-0 in the 4th quarter. Okay. That's how bad that fall was.
Rutgers is not a good offense.
No, and they got a punt block. And by the way, that's Ross Ells' special team.
Schiano is a punt block machine.
So you're right. Sparty's in trouble. You're right. That's a crushing loss. You it can wipe out a season. That's the type of loss that can wipe out a season, especially when you come back and face what we just talked about. They're going to get beat up on their home field by Michigan.
And that goes to the whole point. We were talking about just how Nebraska won the bye week. I mean, the fact that Michigan State lost a game like that, the Illinois win, all of a sudden looks a whole lot better than it did when people were saying Illinois was totally trash. Well, they just beat a 5-1 Maryland team. And then, with a Wisconsin falling off with their injuries at quarterback, like that was about as successful of a off week from your opponent's standpoint that Nebraska could ever ask for.
That injury to Mordecai and then the loss to Iowa, when you go back to Camp Randall now, November 18, that probably takes about 10 miles per hour off the fastball.
It really does. I watched Braden Locke. There's a big drop off.
Camp Randall, the atmosphere, that game.
That too. But you're facing a team with a very average quarterback now. He's a little guy. He's 6 foot. They list him at 6 foot, 200. And it will. No, the fans, you're exactly right. The fans saw what you saw what I saw. Locke is not going to be the guy that leads you to 7 wins in the Big Ten. He's not that type of guy.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Now, this week we've got the game of the week in college football, Penn State at Ohio State. We're going to learn a lot about these teams. Ohio State's a 4-point favorite. Rutgers, Indiana. So Rutgers can get bowl eligible in Bloomington. They are a 5-point favorite to go to 6-2 if they win this game. Minnesota goes to Iowa. The Hawkeyes are just 3.5-point favorites over the Gophers in Iowa City. Nebraska obviously is an 11-point favorite now against Northwestern. Wisconsin is a 2.5-point favorite at Illinois. I'm picking Illinois in that game.
Yeah, that's going to be a very intriguing
for
matchup.
Brett Bielema, especially
because I mean that's a personal game.
What a game,
no doubt. And then Illinois got a little bit of swag back.
What a fascinating. I mean, I don't know if anybody in Champaign cares about it, but I think it's really fascinating to see what happens with Braden Locke in that game. Is Braylon Allen ready to carry the load there? Now, Illinois, I think you guys agree, they're not great, but they're not bad up front on defense. Pretty good. They're pretty physical up front. I think Wisconsin will struggle. I like the Illinois pick. I haven't sized it up completely, but that seems like a game Illinois could win.
So Michigan is a 24-point favorite in East Lansing. The over-under is 48. I just don't see how Michigan State's going to score any more than 7 points, maybe 10.
Yeah.
I would take Michigan to cover that easily.
Yeah. Spread's just not bigger, to be honest. I mean maybe the rivalry component.
What is it again?
24. Harbaugh is going to want to run it up.
Especially with what happened last year. Remember when the big fight in the tunnel when there was Michigan State dudes basically jumped a Michigan
player? Was that
player?
Last year or 2 years ago?
It was last year.
Last year, yeah. Okay. Wow. Well, yeah, the big one's Penn State, Ohio State, though. I mean, it's got a mega game and a big noon kickoff.
It's a tough pick because Penn State's defense is elite.
Really tough.
Elite.
Tough. But Ohio State's playing some good ball right now.
Yeah. I mean, the receivers for Ohio State are going to get separation.
Think about the pressure in this game for both coaches. Franklin's only won 1 Big Ten title, I think, in 10 years, right? Is that about right? 10 years?
Yes.
Okay. There's some pressure on him to win a Big Ten title. Think about the pressure on the Ohio State coach if they lose this game. I mean, you still got to play Michigan. You still got that.
Because if they go 10-2, like that's
the
world's over there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how angry. I mean, they expect 12-0 there.
Right. Well, he'd be under heavy pressure at that point.
All right. Well, lots to watch this week. Nebraska's 2:30. Remember, we'll be on post-game live, shooting between an 8 and 8:30 start time. It just kind of depends on how the game ends. And we'll get Steve Sipple's post-game margarita as well, and HuskerOnline post-game live. So join us here, HuskerOnline YouTube channel. Like, follow, subscribe to us anywhere you can get podcasts or on the HuskerOnline YouTube page. Also, check out all our great content. Abby Barmore will have full coverage of Nebraska, Wisconsin for that 1-2 game, and we'll have plenty of coverage, obviously, here leading up and through the matchup with Northwestern. For Steve Sipple, Robin Washut, I'm Sean Callahan, signing off here on this week's edition of the HuskerOnline Show.